99.1 FM.
Burby's 99.5 FM. Kaieteur Radio.
Keeping your hands clean is one of the most important steps you can take to avoid getting sick and spreading germs to others. So be wise and wash your hands regularly to keep those germs at bay. Get more tips for healthy living by tuning into Kaieteur Radio every Monday at 1:05 p.m. for Your Health Matters.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Your Health Matters here on Kaieteur Radio. I'm your host, Rehanna Ramsay. I hope everyone is doing well this afternoon. Today, we will be discussing some good tips for healthy living, and we will be joined by Dr. Hortensia Hamilton, who's the Director of Primary Healthcare Services at the Ministry of Health. She's joining us via Zoom. Good afternoon, Dr. Hamilton.
Hi, good afternoon.
And so our discussion is coming ahead of, as we kick off Caribbean Wellness Week. Is that so?
Correct. Next week is Caribbean Wellness Week.
Well, yes, next week, sorry. And so we will be discussing a number of things, and then we'll get into some of the activities. So one of our main questions this afternoon, or one of the main questions that was posted to me is how do you maintain a balanced and healthy diet? So just give us a little brief on that.
So that's a good question, and it takes us back to what we learned from primary school all the way up, that you need to make sure that you have adequate fruits and vegetables, that you have your starch, you have your protein, and that you obviously also make sure that you have a lot of water. Now, one of the things that we do is that we use a food plate as we call it,
Yes.
and we teach persons to divide your plate so that you can understand what are the portions that are required for your meal every day. And when you divide your plate, the first thing we tell you to do is to divide it in two halves. And in those two halves, for each half, the larger part of one half should have your fruits and vegetables, and the smaller part should have your starch. And when you go to the other half, it's where you have your protein and your fats. So the smaller portion on that other half should be your fat, and the larger half your protein. So you know for a fact that two of the main things that you should have on your plate should be protein and your fruits and vegetables. Of course, you need starch because it gives you energy, and the same for the fats. And water, always in large quantities, because your body cannot work without water.
Talking about water, how often should we drink water? And what should we do? Let's say we slip on our intake. How do we, basically, what do you suggest we do to ensure that we get enough hydration, water?
What we try to advise persons that is easier for them to be able to connect is that you should try to have at least 8 glasses of water every day, or 2 liters. And with that, sometimes it's more difficult for you to be able to do it during the day. So one of the things you know is that almost every fair that you go to, every activity, they always give out samples of tokens, and water bottles seem to be one of that.
Yes.
You try to fill your water bottle, ensure it's in your bag, ensure you have it at your desk, ensure you have it in the car. And so you will always be prone to take it. Now, some people say they do not like to drink water. There are other ways to spice up the water to make it more tasty. You can add fresh fruits, you can add mint, you can add ginger just to give it some flavor, but it would still be you taking the water. So if you do not like to drink the water just as it is plain, you can add those things to still make it more appetizing for you, and so that you ensure that you get your water in on a daily basis.
And for those who might not know understand when you say 8 glasses, or let's say they drink, they wanna they use the normal bottles that we buy. How many of those bottles will be equivalent to 8 glasses? The
So
normal
you need at least four of those bottles. If you can have four of those bottles during the day,
yeah.
the tropical mist, if you can have at least four of those, that'll be perfect.
And as we move along, exercise. How does exercise play into healthy living? We know that we have to eat right and drink water, but we know also exercise. We have to be active. So, tell us a little bit about some of the exercises we can do, even if we're not too mobile. Let's say a person who's not that mobile. What can they do to make sure that they're active and their body's functioning at the correct level? Sorry.
So I think one of the first things that we have to establish is that you should at least try to exercise at least four times per week for 40 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So after 30 minutes, that's when your body really starts to burn any calories. So we try to make sure that you exercise four times a week for 40 minutes. That will be getting in your core exercises. Now, the thing is that exercise is important because it allows your organs to function. It allows you to get rid of waste, and it gives your body the strength that you need. And one of the things that we learned is that because your body sorts of goes through a period where you have the accelerated heart rate, your blood pressure will raise a little, your breathing raises a little. It allows you to bring in cleaner air, and it has this way of also relieving some of the some of the harmful hormones that may appear, especially when you're going through a very stressful day. And so exercise has that ability to be able to take care of all of those things. It helps you to get rid of the waste through the perspiration that occurs, and so your body gets to function better. For persons, it depends. The exercise that will be very good for someone who's young and healthy is not going to be the same for someone who's older. And
Sure.
so we tend to advise persons look at their age, look at their medical conditions, and from that you choose exercises. If you have deformities, they may recommend that you try to exercise, do exercises to build your muscles in the specific areas where you need more muscle strength. If you're just a normal person, we recommend that you do cardio just to get your heart beating, that you do breathing exercises, that you strengthen and you tone just to make sure that all of your muscles are working, and they're allowed to go through that process. And for those persons who may have particular diseases, of course, it will be important that sometimes you not may not be able to do all of the walking and the running, but they have things like yoga, they have breathing exercises, you have exercises in place. But the important thing is to ensure that the exercises that are selected can work and does not do more harm than good. And
Sure.
so you may need to have counseling from someone who will be able to direct you to what you require to do for your condition.
Um, in terms of getting enough exercise, somebody might say, "Oh, I may need to go to the gym to do that," and that's not totally true. And let's say they say, "I don't have time. My schedule is too packed," or I might not have time to run in the morning. How do those persons ensure they get enough exercise? I think there are simple ones that you can suggest.
Yes, they are. So like for those people who don't really have a lot of time, we recommend that instead of you taking a car to go somewhere, that you do more walking between offices, that
Mm-hmm.
you get your steps in. Now we have the different um, technology in place to tell us when we're getting our steps in. You have your phone also. So instead of just taking the elevator, you take the stairs. Instead of getting a drop up the road when it's not very far away, you walk. So you try to do more in between in the spaces. I know for a fact that some of the offices are also putting things in place. Instead of having a printer at everyone's desk, they have a common printer. So you have to get up to go to that printer to walk. to be able to do work.
Yes.
And so those are simple things that I know persons are putting in place to ensure that their employees actually get some steps in during the day and that
Yes.
they're not just sedentary. And you can do that even when you're at home. I mean, putting on your music and dancing while you're cooking and preparing in the morning is getting your exercises in. Doing some of the breathing exercises when you just get out of bed, it's getting your exercise in. Doing some stretches before you go to sleep is getting some exercise in also.
Sure. And in terms of rest, rest has a place in all of this in wellness. Tell us about getting adequate rest and how important it is for us, our overall
Well,
well-being.
of course, there's a reason why there's an insistence that at least you get 8 hours of sleep every day. Some persons would have reduced it to 6 hours, but because the body requires time to repair, rest is important. Our body needs to reset at the end of the day. And if we don't allow our body to reset, then it means that we will overuse our body. And you will not get the maximum capacity and the maximum work out of it. And you'll find that those persons may have situations where the immune system might be compromised, where their mental health might be compromised, or they may be in a position in which it's easier to have um, strains and all of that on their muscle because you do not get the requisite resetting. And our brain needs to reset. What we don't know is that every day we are accumulating a lot of information. It may not bother you because you are sometimes concentrated in an activity, but your brain and your senses are picking up all of the stimulus that goes on around you all day. And I tell people, how why this happens. Like if you look at a movie, if you notice when persons cannot remember an event, they actually do hypnosis. Now, they do hypnosis in a lot of cases because you may be focused on the thing just in front of you, but your brain is still capturing all of the other information around. And when you put persons in that state, they're able to appreciate all of the other things that are happening. And so, in order for our brain to be able to reset and to put everything that they've captured during the day in its own location, you
Yes.
need that period for the brain, that downtime for the brain to work. So while you're sleeping, your brain is working all the time, analyzing and fitting everything that you've captured during the day.
Okay.
What you need to retain, what it needs to get rid of.
And we have instead, like in substitution, even if you're not sleeping, you have other activities you can do to relax as well.
Correct. Meditation is important. And even that same breathing exercises that I was mentioning, it
Yes.
also causes you to be in a state of calm,
Yes.
that allows you to also have some amount of relaxation occurring.
And we spoke about the foods, but there are also supplements that we can use. And as a doctor, you would have an idea of some of these supplements that we can probably pick up at our neighborhood pharmacy, or we can purchase over the counter. Could you just touch on that for me?
Yes, so even though we do take in some amount of minerals and vitamins when we use our balanced diet, some of it is still not in the right quantities that we need it. And I could
Yes.
say also gynaes have a way of overcooking their food. And so it loses a lot of the nutritional content. And so you need that additional supplementation to be able to provide the functions that you need. And so even for persons who do eat a balanced diet, we still recommend that they take supplements, zinc, that they take some vitamin D, calcium, all of the vitamin B line, because the vitamin B are so important for your nerve health. That is the main thing that works with your nerve. And with age, especially for women, calcium becomes very important because as we age, we lose calcium from our bones. And so all of those have their part, but a lot of it has to do with the neural transmission and getting your stimuluses and being able to have the nerve function within the capacity that it should. So it is important. And for people who have challenges with vitamins, they have lots of signs. One of the first things is to start having our neurological symptoms, as we call them. So you may
Yes.
find tingling in your fingers, you may feel
Mm-hmm.
numbness, you may feel some sensation on your skin. All of those are telling you sometimes that your nerve need the food. So we recommend that persons also take their vitamin supplements. And you can go to any pharmacy, you can go to any facility. You just ask for your multivitamin and your B complex, and one a day is just fine. And if you're more sophisticated, you have one a day women, you have one a day men, you have one a day adolescents, all of that. But it's important that we do have our supplements on a daily basis.
Yes. And in terms of the minerals, we know that there are 20 essential minerals. How do we ensure that we're getting enough of those?
Well, the minerals are found in most of our daily food that we take in. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of it you will have in your leafy vegetables. And that is why there's always the insistence that you take vegetables in the right quantities. And the Guyanese population need to learn not to overcook. Steaming is just fine. You allow it to be released in the meal, but when we are so insistent on this chewing down that we do so often, we take away some of that from it. And your fruits also can give you your vitamins and your minerals that you need also. But some of them are not present in the meals that we take. So that is why the supplements are important also.
All right. All right, we'll take a short break, and when we come back, we'll have more from Dr. Hamilton on good tips for healthy living. And we will be talking a little later in the program about some of the activities that will kickstart Caribbean Wellness Week and why it's important for our on our annual health calendar. So let's go to the break, Raj.
Kaieteur Radio, keeping you informed.
Demerara and Essequibo 99.1 FM.
Burby's 99.5 FM. Kaieteur Radio.
Welcome back. You're listening to Kaieteur Radio. I'm your host. You're listening to Your Health Matters. I'm your host, Rehanna Ramsay. And I have with me Dr. Hortensia Hamilton, who is the Director of Primary Healthcare Services at the Ministry of Health. And she's joining us via Zoom to share little bit on good practices for healthy living. And she is has been telling us, giving us some tips on how much water, how we can ensure we get enough water, how vitamins and minerals are essential to our bodies, our well-being, and so on. So as we are on the topic, Dr. Hamilton.
I'm here.
uh,
I'm
we
speaking with you.
Yes, we're on the topic of how our body functions, and sometimes we eat and sometimes we might overeat. How do we ensure we stay within our healthy body mass index, the BMI? This is something we don't really know how to calculate. So how is that done, and how why is it important that we understand um, this factor?
So there's actually an easy way um, for you to calculate your body mass index. Technology has brought us great things. If you just go onto your Google, you're going to see that they have an automatic calculator.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, you'll still need to know what to fill in.
Yes.
So for that calculation, we use your weight and your height. your weight in kilograms and your height in meters square.
Mm-hmm.
And so you divide the weight by your height in meters square, and you will have a numerical value that you would get as the from the division. So there's actually a chart where you then take that numerical value that you get to place in the chart to see where you fall.
Mm-hmm.
So for the normal BMI, it is 18.5 to 24.9. So as long as you're between 18.5 to 24.9, for that value, you're in your normal weight. If you're 25 to 29.9, we consider that you're overweight. If you
Mm-hmm.
are 30 and above, you're considered to be obese.
Mm-hmm.
And for those who fall below that 18.5, you're considered to be underweight. So when you have calculated your value, it then tells you whether your weight is normal or whether you have to lose weight or gain weight. And from that standpoint, then you will have your nutritional counseling that you have to look into. If you have to lose weight, then what it would be recommended is that you decrease your caloric intake for the day and you exercise. So when you decrease it, you create a deficit, and so your body will utilize either the storage that is already there, and that will then provide the energy that is required for you to get about your daily activities for yourself. If it is that you're on the weight, then you'll have to increase your caloric intake so that you can then have the requisite weight to meet. Of course, we always recommend that even while you're increasing your caloric intake, that you also exercise, because we want you to have um, a body mass that is more muscle than actual fat deposit.
Mm-hmm.
So that is basically how it works with maintaining your weight and utilizing your body mass index to be able to work with what is the weight requirement.
And while being overweight is not being healthy, being underweight is as unhealthy as being overweight, isn't that so?
Correct. Underweight and overweight is basically considered to be, um, we consider them both to be malnourished, a
Mm.
state of being malnourished.
Uh, in terms of our overall health and well-being, we can't ignore our mental health. And I know this may not be your area of expertise, but you can touch a bit on it. Let's say we are stressed and we you mentioned breathing exercises earlier, but are there any other things that we can do to ensure that we maintain a healthy mental health balance where we have certain coping mechanisms that will help us to go through our day.
Well, yes, and I'm happy that you touched on coping mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
That is something that is not always an acquired skill, but sometimes it's taught.
Yes.
And it starts from your family life, where you do have to teach your children how to cope with situations. So sometimes the overprotective parents need to bear that in mind. Every time you step in and don't allow a child to be able to solve a problem, then you're taking away from them actually learning how to cope with situations.
Yes.
But moving along, there are lots of things that you have to learn to do. And first, identify what your stressors are. And when you are encountering your stressors, if it becomes too much for you, then you need to step back. Building healthy relationships is important because you have an opportunity to offload. And when we have that constant communication with our friends, something goes, something happens, then you can call and you're
Mm-hmm.
able to discuss it. It allows you to de-stress.
Mm-hmm.
Exercise has the same effect for a person. People use music therapy, people do their breathing exercises, people do volunteer work, all of that. All of those are things that works based on the person's individual need that can assist with de-stressing. But it's important always to recognize that when you're at your threshold, that you need to step back and you need to know what is your threshold. And if it is that your mechanism for management of stress, and stressful situations don't work and they're not working, and you recognize that you're not getting relief, then you do have to seek medical attention to be able to deal with the challenges.
That's right. In terms of our, we have some, we're climbing out of the pandemic, and now we're dealing with monkeypox, and there are also other viruses and bacteria. There are certain practices that we need to constantly maintain. COVID-19 taught us some, not taught us, but emphasized what we should do in terms of keeping ourselves free from viruses and bacteria, because that's part of maintaining, having, practicing good, healthy, good practices for healthy living. Touch on that a little bit for me, in terms of what we should do to maintain hygiene in our day-to-day activities.
So we have the basic hygienic practices that, as you rightfully said, COVID-19 taught us. The hand washing, ensuring that you sanitize, ensuring that you keep spaces between yourself and other person, that physical space that we didn't always maintain at some point in time. Wearing the mask, those are still very effective. Because the thing is with monkeypox is that droplets and skin contact with the the secretions from the lesions are ways in which this particular disease is spread. Um, there is still the need to ensure that your mask, you always have it in place, and that you wash and you sanitize. There can't be enough emphasis on the importance of washing and sanitize, because we touch our face, we touch our eyes, we do all of those things, which are involuntary action. You can't always control what you're going to do. So what you can control is to ensure that your hands and your skin remains clean, and that we put the same practices into place. When you are home, you go towards your laundry area, and then you derobe, you take off your clothes, instead of just mixing with everyone in your household and sitting and getting up, just transmitting infection from outside to inside.
We have a practice in not just Guyana. I'm not sure, not certain, but in this part of the world, we don't usually visit the doctor often, and this is something that I want you to emphasize on, because a regular checkup is very essential to maintaining uh, a healthy living. Could you tell us how often should we go visit our doctor, and not just when we're sick or feel it like we're at death's door?
Well, it depends on what are the underlying conditions. But if you are now going just for a general checkup and you consider to be healthy,
Yes.
then at least you should see a doctor once a year and you do your general checkup. What would go for men would be a little bit different for the female, and also for the child and the adolescent. But there's some specific things that both should look at. And this is not just from the doctor. You should at least get dental screening done during the year. For eye, you should at least have that done twice per year. At some point in time, you should at least try to have your hearing tested. For women, you should see a gynecologist at least once per year. You should do your own breast examination every month after your period. Those are things that you have to incorporate into your normal life, so that it allows you to detect when anything is going wrong. And of course, we do need to check to see what is happening with our liver function, how our kidneys are functioning, check your cholesterol level and those things, so that you're aware of if you have any risk for cardiac diseases or not. And these are things that we should try to do on a yearly basis.
And this helps to basically lengthen your time here, right? Because if you keep checking, you can catch certain diseases or certain ailments in your body early, and you can be able to treat it.
Correct. Correct.
And if you, let's say, how important is it to have a, one doctor or at least one physician with all your records. I don't think it's practical. It's practical in Guyana because most people go to the public health facilities. But would you say it's important to just use one doctor or have a stationary physician that you go to?
Well, that's a little bit challenging to answer, because we have lots of specialties.
Yes.
And because we have specialties, everyone would not be able to provide you with all of the information that you have,
Mm-hmm.
unless it's a general practitioner. And to some extent, there are cases and there are things that would require another person to look into. So that one is a little bit difficult to respond to. But what I would say, it's not so much of who you go to, but ensuring that you do go.
Yes.
That is what is the main focus, that you do have your regular checks at least once per year.
Mm-hmm.
Depending on your condition, if you have an orthopedic condition, of course, you have to go and see the orthopedic specialist. Um, but there's some specific things that we want you to have always there. You should always have your pap smear done or your VIA or your HPV testing done so that you are aware of what is happening.
Okay. Great. So we are Carbon Wellness Week is is about to kick off next week.
So you got
And I just wanted you to give us like a brief background of why this is an important part of Guyana's annual health calendar. And can you explain a little bit about what we are looking at for the week of activities, the focus of the week of activities?
So, Caribbean Wellness Week is going to be celebrated in all of the Caribbean countries,
Mm-hmm.
Guyana included. And this is a week where the health sector tries to raise awareness on the topic of wellness, where persons are being encouraged to develop healthy lifestyle, make healthy lifestyle choices so that you do not have diseases that have to require treatment, or if you do already have a disease, that you try to adapt the lifestyle, that you try to be adherent to what are the management requirements so that you do not develop complications. And so what we will be providing for the general public will be education in all of the areas, diet, exercise, what are some of the specific exercises per disease condition. Um, we will also be offering some of the screening services that are available in our facilities, where we'll have dental, we'll have VIA being done, we'll have breast examination being done. So persons would not just come and get the service, but for those with that we can teach them how to do themselves, we will also use that opportunity to teach them. We are really working hard to ensure that the life expectancy of the Guyanese population increases over the next couple of years and that we have a healthier population. This is our springboard. And after 2 years of COVID and not having that face to face interaction, we're hoping that we have the opportunity to engage as many persons as possible and get the messages on health out there so persons can have an active participation and role and recognize the responsibility that comes with them keeping themselves healthy and not just having it be done from the perspective of the health system.
Okay. And in what form will these activities be taking? Will they have booths set up at the Ministry of Health's main campus, main facility? Sorry. Um, will you be at the health centers? Where can the public expect to access your public awareness campaign?
So we're going to have a health symposium and an exhibition at the Artichoke Convention Center on the 12th and 13th, which is next week, Monday and Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
And then in all of the regions at various health facilities, we're going to have activities done. There will be environmental health activities. We'll have chronic disease activities. In some locations, we'll have vaccination and education.
Hello? I think we lost her a bit there.
Within some of the schools as well, and we'll be doing
Uh,
screening
d-
for those
Dr.
residents.
Hamilton, we lost you a
And
bit.
this will
So
be
we lost you a bit just now. So can you go back? You were speaking about the health centers, and we lost you a bit after that. Can you repeat what you were saying? So that the
apologies. So I was saying we will be working at various health centers across the country. We will be working at some of the markets where we'll be doing different activities. We will be working in communities and in schools, all working on the health promotion agenda, looking at vaccination, chronic disease, and we will visit some of our elderly homes across the country to provide services for the residents.
hmm is there an overall theme for this year's event?
So the theme that we're looking at will be healthy individuals, communities, and organizations.
hmm And uh, in terms of your scope, you said every region, because I couldn't hear earlier.
Every region, yes, every region will have activities done. It's across the country.
All right, folks. So you heard it from Dr. Hamilton. So you can go to your health center within the next week, and you can access some certain services, and certain activities will be ongoing where you can get information on the various topics, health topics, and helpful tips so that you can maintain your healthy lifestyles. Dr. Hamilton, just before we leave, we wrap up, can you tell us, just share, uh, emphasize, and give us some simple tips for healthy living?
So we at the Ministry of Health, we ensure that we want persons to recognize that in order to live healthy, there are three main things that we hope that you zoom into. One is that you ensure that you have a balanced diet every day, that you exercise, that you avoid the use of tobacco, and that alcohol is taken in very small quantities. With that being said, you also engage in healthy relationships so that your mental health can be preserved.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Hamilton. Thank you for joining us. I know your schedule is tight. And for those who listen, thank you for tuning in. This brings us to the end of another edition of Your Health Matters on Kaieteur Radio. We do hope that you learned something and you will put it into practice. And let's continue our next discussion next week when you reach us back here on the radio, and we live stream on Facebook as well, so you can join us in on Facebook if you want to see who's talking. Bye bye.